For those of you who don't know, I'm RJ Rickert, ISW. Um, and today this is going to be hopefully a pretty in-depth RIP training seminar for you guys. So here's the transfer RIP right here. Step one, and by the way, for those of you, if you don't have the transfer RIP cheat sheet, I have that available following the seminar, so just go ahead and let me know if you don't have it, and I will be happy to send it to you following this. So here's step one of the RIP, and this will have all of your paper profiles with your printer. So most of you guys will probably just have either the 8432 or the 711. And what you got to do is whatever printer you use, you just have to, whatever paper you're using during the time, just select that paper. So for this session, I'm just going to stick with this laser dark profile right here. And so all you got to do is select it and hit select. And here's where you load in your files. So as you can see, once you load in an image, if you don't delete it, it will stay there forever until you go ahead and go back and delete it. And how to load in an image is you come down here. Before you do load in the image, you want to come to this tab right here and make sure your paper size is selected. So if you're using 11 by 17, have that selected. If you're using the 8.5 by 11 size paper, have that selected before you load in your image. So for all of mine, I'll do 11 by 17, and you'll come here into load file, and wherever you saved your images, you'll just go ahead and click on any image and hit open. And if you ever see this green loading bar over here, that just means the RIP is loading. So if we have our image, it'll be right at the top, and then how to load it into the RIP, you're actually going to click on the image itself. As you can see here, we're just loaded. All it's doing is loading into the RIP. And so that's going to take us to step 3. Step 3 of the RIP is kind of going to take like a design software within the RIP itself. And I'm going to take you through, we can change colors if we want to. We can make our black, more of a black, since it's process black. We can increase our saturation to help our colors pop off of our shirts better. And we can also remove a color from here. So right off the bat, if you load in your image and you don't need to make any changes to it, I'm always going to recommend bumping up your saturation a little bit, either 5 to 10. And what that's going to do is it's going to help your colors be much more vibrant. So when you go to your shirt, the vibrancy is going to be much better than if you did not use the saturation button. And so as you can see here, if I decrease the saturation and you come over and look at the color, it dulls it out. So that's why, I'm always going to recommend increasing the saturation just a little bit. Like I said, just to increase that vibrancy of the color. Mostly, that's all I do. Most of the time, the images are ready to get printed. We're just using the print to control our white. So most of the time, I'm going to just come here to the saturation button and hit next. What you can do is see what the image is going to look like on the shirt, or see if there is any white toner in this. So if you come down here to substrate color, I can choose anything else than white. So let's just say we're going on a black shirt. You will be able to see what that image is going to look like on a black shirt, or say we're going on a light blue shirt. You can do all that changing right here, just so you can kind of see. Secondly, this makes sure that your image is transparent. So if I would change this substrate color to a light blue, but my screen would stay white, that tells me that the image was not saved without removing the background, which means you would have to go back into your design software and delete that background. So let's get into color changing. So if you come up here to the selective color correction and hit the plus, you will be able to now change colors. So if I select this red right here and say I just wanted it to be blue, all I would do is go to destination color and I would click the color I wanted to change it to, and this comes stock at 3, your tolerance. When you're making a change, you want it to at least be 10, so I just put a 1 in front of it. And then by clicking save, you'll see here I changed that color and this color down here, the red, to the blue very easily. Now say you have a specific red. So say your source color, so all you'd have to do, if you don't want to keep that, just click on it here and then hit the delete button or the remove button, and it'll go back to normal. Say I have a specific red I'm dealing with, I'd click on the red and it shows me 98 and 69. Well, what if my red that I have was 10, 98, and 61, or in 69? Now you can go ahead and hit save, and it's going to change it to that specific red that you want. So that's kind of how within the RIP software you can kind of get closer to the colors you're working with. We want to save our designs in CMYK outputs because it is a CMYK printer. And then, so now the next thing I'm going to do is when you're printing black, in order to achieve the best process black, you will go into your image and select the black within the image, and it's going to give you a color output here. Most of the time, it is going to just give you a little bit of each to try to create that black. In order to get the best process black, we want to come down here and change all of these to 100, making sure our tolerance is still at least 10, and then hitting save. And that's how we're going to change our black more into the best process black we can get, since there's not a true black that comes with the printer. Now with the 8432, you can swap out the white and the black, but most of the time you're probably going to use the process black because you're going to need to print white behind the other colors. Lastly is remove color. So say I didn't want this red, I would come down here to remove color and click the color you want to remove, hit save, and then it's all in the tolerance right here. So if you start at 1 and you look over to the screen and it's still there, that means we just have to bump up the tolerance a little bit. So I could go to 3, still didn't remove anything. I'm going to take it to 5, nothing. Now I'm going to go to 7, got rid of a little bit, and if I go up to 10, you could see it got rid of it, but 10 got rid of some of your other colors that looks just like it. So this is where you kind of got to play around with the tolerance. Go back to 8. So 8 now got rid of the red, but also got rid of this pink. And 7. So as you can see here, it's going to get rid of the colors that is very close to that substrate, or the same color. So when I go to 8 here, you go, so that's kind of where it's going to be trickier. It's going to be easier if you go ahead of time remove that red, because as you can see, it's going to get rid of most of the stuff that looks like it, especially with the reds. It's going to look just like the pinks and stuff like that. But this can easily be taken out of ahead of time in like a Corel Draw or something like that. If I wanted to just do the yellow, and I went to 8, it really just got rid of the yellow because there's nothing else that's really yellow on the image. So, you know, for some colors it's going to be better than others, but there's definitely a way to remove some colors here in the rip. But yeah, that's really just step 3. Is, like I said, it's a little bit of a design software. Most of the time, if your image is ready to be printed, all you have to do is, like I said, I did not recommend, right? I'd recommend just putting that saturation up a little bit for your brighter colors, and you're going to end up hitting next. So your next screen right here this is your white. This is how we control our white. This is why we bought the rip, because we want to limit the amount of toner we're putting on the rip. So if you wanted to turn white off for some reason, you would just go up there and turn off your spot fill up. If not, as you can see here, it's only putting white behind the colors that need it, and the colors that don't need it, it's not putting white behind. So the reason you get the rip is because the Oki in the printer driver, without a software, prints 300% of color density or coverage. As you can see here, it puts white behind every single color no matter what until that color fills up to 300%. So the nice thing about the rip is that it comes stock at 150, which on pretty much every single cotton shirt you're dealing with, this is really all you need in order to get a successful transfer. The next step right here, your factor, this is, to put it, you know, in easy terms, so this only lays white where white is needed. So if I bump this factor up from 1 to 2, you're going to see here that the colors that have the white behind it will get much more dense, but everything else did not. So this is a way to, if you want a little bit of a brighter red or a brighter yellow, but you still want your darker colors and your blacks to stay true, you can use this factor, and now it'll start, you know, laying white just where the white is needed. As you can see, you know, the darker colors, like I said earlier, don't get touched with any white. I recommend using this setting, especially when you're going on polyester shirts, especially colored polyester shirts. I would recommend doing a factor of 3 and a coverage of 200, and that's a way that we're going to fight dye migration. So dye migration, for those that don't know, is when the shirt color actually comes through the toner and you can actually see it. So like a black polyester shirt, if I wouldn't increase some of this toner, maybe in the yellows and stuff like that, you'll actually see black coming through those colors. So in order to, you know, have a successful transfer onto a dark polyester shirt, these would be the settings I recommend. 200% coverage, factor of 3. And now let's get into this underfilling. Underfilling is choking back the white. So for these colors right here, in order to not receive a white border around your image, I'm always going to recommend doing an underfilling of 1 to 2. And you couldn't go all the way to 5, but 5 is aggressive, and I have some images that show this. So if you see here, this is a factor of 1. So if you see here, it chokes back the white just a little bit on the colors that need it, on that blue right here. Now a factor of 5 device pixels, as you can see here, is a much more choke to that white toner. So now it really pulls the colors back, or the white back. Like I said, this isn't really necessary. 2 device pixels will get you exactly what you're looking for every time. But I like to show just the difference for you guys, so you guys can see. I'm a visual person. And then lastly, preserve partial transparency. If I click this image right here, as you can see, if you're looking at the image itself, it actually is a choke feature itself. So it's going to choke back the white in the colors. So it's going to help prevent any borders around that image. So if we were going on just a normal cotton shirt, that's realistically, this would be your baseline right here. And like I said, if you wanted to add some more white behind the yellow, you can always bump up that factor. But most of the time, you want your step 4 to look just like this right here. Before I do go on, is there any questions you guys have regards to step 3 or 4 before I move on to step 5? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to step 5. And I'm not looking at the chat. Pull that down here. So step 5. So this is where you can kind of make some magic happen. The first and most important thing is making sure your printer is selected at the top. Sometimes when you just get this printer, you'll have like your normal Microsoft Print to PDF or your desktop printer selected. So you want to make sure that you have your 8432. As you can see here, mine says copy 3. It's because I have used 3 different printers, 3 different Oki 8432 printers in the past week. So every time I add a new printer, it just adds a copy. So if you go to your devices and printers, as you can see here, I have a bunch of Okis right there. Now we can also mirror the image. So as you can see here, you don't need to pre-mirror your image in the RIP software. You can come up to the corner here and mirror it. But be aware, if a customer sends you something that's already pre-mirrored, like this Pirates of the Caribbean right here, it's already pre-mirrored, you would want to go up and make sure that's on none. So, and then obviously you can change copies and stuff like that. You can add as many as you want. So most questions come right in this section right here. Use screening from printer is going to print exactly what it sees here. So for an image like the music, since this is already broken up, it's a vector image, there's a lot of room for water to come through in the washing machine and the dryer. This image, per se can breathe. So on this step 5, use screening from printer is going to be perfectly fine. And I would say 75 to 80% of the time you're going to be using this use screening from printer. You're going to print exactly what it is. A lot of this stuff will be vector files, vector images, stuff of that sort. So before I go any farther into this, I'm going to jump to these printer settings here. So you see here your media type says user type 1. In step 1, when you select the laser dark feature, it automatically chooses user type 1 for you. Now you choose the laser light feature, it changes it to user type 2 for you. So you really don't have to worry about this. Something did come up today though, using that laser light paper. You can use this ultra heavy 3 function if your print quality was differing a little bit. So be aware of that, but most of the time you'll just be whatever the printer profile you selected for step 1, it's going to change your media type for you. So down here for input tray, at the beginning when you start to just use your printer, I would recommend everyone to use this multi-purpose tray feature. And what this does, it kind of acts as like an oh crap button, oh shoot button, because if I hit print, it's going to make you hit the online button on your printer before it actually prints. So to make sure you're not wasting any paper, if I hit print here and I said, oh shoot, maybe I forgot to mirror my image. Well, then you can just hit cancel on your printer without wasting any sheets of paper. Once you get better in the RIP and you really want it to start printing, or especially if you're printing multiples at a time, say 5 or 10 prints, if you choose this to automatic tray detection, make sure there's no paper in your tray 1 at the very bottom, and it will automatically, once you hit print, start to pull the images from you or from your printer and print it for you automatically. As you see here, I have an offset of -4 with millimeters. Basically, all this is doing is keeping my image on the page. So for something like this, it's kind of like a full coverage image. By putting -4 here in millimeters, it's keeping your image on the page by 1/4 of an inch from side to side. So that's a way that you know, because when you marry the A and B sheets, if you guys have used it so far, the B sheet on the laser dark paper is a little bit smaller than the A sheet, so you definitely don't want to print edge to edge. So this is a way that the RIP will do it for you and just make sure that your image is on the page where it needs to be. Lastly, the ICC profile. It says it right here, no ICC profile is correct unless you have created a specific profile for this application. I'll just tell you guys, I always have no ICC profile selected, and I have had no issues with getting the proper colors that I wanted to achieve. So if Forever came out with a new profile, you would see it down here, and you could totally use it. But, you know, kind of like it says right here, it's really not needed unless something specifically made. Before I get further into this stuff right here, this is probably where a lot of questions might be, but is there any questions up to this point that I can help answer? Why don't I offset the Y? Okay, so I don't offset the Y. You totally can, but the A to B paper is just smaller from side to side, so it is the exact length, you know, from top to bottom. But, you know, to make sure it gets choked back, I could easily put -4 here too. So I can do -4, -4. So now you know your image is going to be choked down 1/2 inch here and choked in 1/2 inch here. So make sure that your image is completely on that 11 by 17 page. So that's totally acceptable. You can do that. Trying to keep up with the chats. Alright, so let's get into some of these other features. And I'm going to use a specific image because I already pre-did some of this stuff. So this pig image right here. As you can see, this already has a background. So say we're going on a darker substrate and we don't want that background. But we also know that this pig is pretty dense and it's probably going to feel pretty thick if we just print it normally. So you don't have to remove any color here. So I wouldn't actually have to go remove color, click the black, hit save, and bump up my tolerance. I do not have to do this. For it to be the most realistic and you know, the best image possible, and this is for dark shirts, I would go to the screening and I would use screening configured as a mask recommended for dark media. And what this does is it removes the dark color from the image for you, and then it actually halftones or rasterizes the rest of the image, so it's a nice soft feel. So this is how we do all of our photography. You know, if I was doing that Pirates of the Caribbean full coverage stuff, that's how we're going to get best results within the RIP. So if you see here, you got a lot of settings right here. You know, the biggest question is, you know, which settings do I use and stuff like that. The mask, this is the size of the hole that you're using. So I believe it comes stock at 30. I would recommend always I always use 25. I guess I could just say that. I always use a 25 mask. I think it's a nice happy medium for getting a lot of detail in your print, but still being soft enough on the shirt where it feels nice. Now, the bigger the number is on here, the smaller your dot will be, or more detail you'll have. The smaller the number here, the larger your dot or your hole will be in your image. So that's why 25 is a nice happy medium, and to me it gives you the best results. Now you can pick the shape. So Euclidean is it's a hole. You can pick round, which is a bunch of holes. You can put squares, or you can pick lines. And I try to keep it, simple for customers. I say if you want a line, use lines, and if you want a hole, use holes. There's really no answer to say which, use what in which situation, because it's really going to be up to you and what your preference is. Your shadow. All right, let's go to the angle. So your angle, so you can control the angle of your dot or your line. So let's just say 0. If I did 0 and I had lines, this would be a vertical line through the image, all the way through it. And then if I did 8250, this would be a horizontal line. So anywhere in the middle is going to make it more of a diagonal. Now, for anyone that study art, when you use Euclidean, I would recommend using some kind of angle other than 0, because it's going to make it look more natural in that image. So I always use 5250. Then your highlights and shadows. To keep it simple, I never touch these. You guys can always play around with it to see if you like it, any changes, but like I said, I don't ever change these, and I've never had one issue with it. So now let's get to shadow tolerance. So when using this dark media, at the end of the day, I don't want to print any of this black. When I use a shadow tolerance of 100, is which it comes stock at, if I go to my pictures here and I zoom in, you can still see here on the corners, on the edges, that I'm printing a little bit of black. So 100 shadow tolerance does not completely get rid of your black. It will actually still print some, which is okay, because sometimes if you're going on maybe like a gray shirt and you want some black still in your image, you can. But just know if you're going on a black shirt, there will still be some black printed. So to completely get rid of that, we got to increase our shadow tolerance. By going to 180, that completely gets rid of your black. I did my example at 210. So at 210, if I zoom in, as you can see now, there is no black left in that image. So now the substrate color of the shirt will actually come through and achieve that black. So now you look at the eyeballs and then the nose and stuff like that. So that's how you're going to get the best result. So basically, long story short, the higher the number of the shadow tolerance, the more dark colors it's going to take out, and then vice versa is opposite. If I have 0 here, it's going to take out less dark colors. So our recommendation is going to be anywhere from 180 to 210 if you want to completely get rid of your black. Let me see if I got any questions here. I do not. Is there any questions on this feature? I would say this will be your second most popular feature that you use. I use this all the time when printing, especially full coverage stuff, in order to get the best feel. All right, let's go on to the next feature. And say you got just let me go to it. Might be some of these. I probably should start deleting some of the stuff. Right here. This ISW logo. Say you want to print these, but you're like, man, it still kind of feels thick, but I don't necessarily want to take away any of these colors. I just want it to be a little softer. Well, or you want to halftone it. Well, you can use the feature Micro Mask. And what Micro Mask does is, you see here, there's no, now you cannot use shadow tolerance. It's saying down here at the percentage, 18% of this image I'm going to have colored or covered in holes. So if I go to my pictures here, here's what 2% of the Micro Mask looks like. So you're saying 2% of this image is covered in holes. As you can see, it's not very much. So this is still 25 mask, but it's only 2%. So as you can see, it's barely putting any holes down. So for best results, I'm going to recommend anywhere from 16 to 20%. So if I go to 20% and then I change it to lines, as you can see, it actually puts more and thicker lines in the image to soften up that feel. Now, if you want the hole to be bigger, at 20% coverage, so right here, Micro Mask percentage at 20%, and if I wanted bigger holes, I went to 10. As you see here, this is how it puts larger holes in here. So this is going to be your softest feel, but it's going to take away a lot of that toner and the color. So necessarily it might look kind of faded out or bland on the shirt. And then vice versa, if I go all the way up to 40 and you zoom in, you can see that it puts a lot of small little holes in there. Excuse me. When you use 40 or even 35 and you're marrying together the A and the B sheets, these holes are too small, so you'll actually get adhesive stuck in these little holes right here, and it's going to look like you actually have white in your image when you most of the time, or all the time, you want the color of the shirt to come through. You don't want white. So that's why I say when you use this feature to keep it on 25, that's going to give you a nice happy medium of a soft feel, but still a lot of detail in that image. Let me see if I had any more. So it's kind of features. So, like I said, 2, that's only 2% of the image. 20% of the image puts more. So some people will do like a 10%. They'll do right here, they'll do a 10%, but they'll do larger holes. So you're putting less holes, but you're putting less bigger holes, if that makes sense for you guys. And then the last feature here is recommended for bright media, which in all honesty, I kind of stay away from this just because when you use this feature and you're going on a white shirt, it takes away so much toner where the image just looks very faded on the shirt itself. I would recommend maybe just using a lighter paper, like the Forever Laser Light. It's going to give you a better hand than the dark will. But I'll still go over this. What this is basically saying is we're going to take away white. So if you're going on a white shirt and you don't want to print white, you can use this feature and it's going to take away your white within the image. But like I said, you're going to start getting into like your yellows. It's going to start taking away a lot of yellow and stuff like that, to where you really don't necessarily want that. But it's a feature there, and people use it for photography, I would say mostly. So if you want to have a photograph go on a white t-shirt, you can use this bright media setting and it'll get rid of more of the lighter colors, but some of the skin tones are pretty light, so if you want the bright media, if I used it on a lighter shirt, I would go up here to like the 300, so it gets rid of less white or lighter colors, and your darker colors actually stay. So those are kind of the 3 features. Like I said, most of the time you're going to be using this use screening from printer feature, but if you're going on anything dark, I would highly recommend using this dark media setting with these settings right here that you see. right here for best results. But yeah, in a nutshell, I mean that's really the RIP software, and I would say it's coming up to you guys, and you know, depending on what image you're using, you know, obviously right here, if I was going on a darker shirt, I would use that dark media setting, because the rule of thumb would be if you have 4 fingers on your image and the image isn't broken up anyway, like it's not distressed, there's no room in it to breathe, I would always rasterize it somehow, just for that image to be the best image possible on the shirt, so it washes great, and it feels great for the customer. It doesn't feel like the old iron-on transfers. But that's kind of the RIP, like I said, A to Z. So I'm going to open this up for a complete conversation, and I'll be happy to answer questions here while we got everybody. And like I said, if I have a cheat sheet here that, if you see, goes through step 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of everything I covered is down on this piece of paper right here. And at the end, it has a little tips and tricks for you. So, like I said, if you don't have this, you let me know, and I will happily share that with you. But if there is no questions, I mean, you guys can feel free to get back to your day. I'm gonna hang out for a little bit if you guys want to stick around. But if not, I appreciate your guys' time, and yeah, thanks for coming and joining us today.